About 5:30, I'd like to get started.
Yeah.
My name is Mark Elliott, and I am filling in for Jeanette DeCastro tonight. She is going to be joining us, I hope, by Zoom. If she's here, thank you, Jeanette. And so she asked me if I would officiate tonight. So this is my first time. I'm sure I'll make lots of mistakes. So I appreciate you all being gracious with me. I'll go ahead and gavel the meeting in. This is what is this? February 12th, Wednesday, February 12th, our meeting of the District Advisory Committee for the North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District. This meeting is being recorded, and we do have the chat open so folks can see. I know it's really difficult to read that. So hopefully if there's something does pop up, you'll let us know. Okay. So we do have an agenda in front of us, and the first is item I've just took care of. And so the second one is approval of our meeting summary from January 8th. If any of you have any, if anyone has any corrections or comments or additions. I'd like a motion to approve the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes.
Do I have a second? Thank you. Everyone agree? Okay, great. Thank you. So second item is two discussion items. It should take about 60 minutes for this portion of the meeting. The first item is going to be facilitated by Camille Trummer. And this has to do with her recent work with the advisory group here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead, Camille.
Thank you. Hi, folks. I hope everyone's staying warm. I'm excited to be back here tonight. The focus of my section, and I'm actually going to keep it a little less than 60 minutes, more like 30 minutes, because I know you'll have a lot to work through, is I want us to revisit the group agreements. And even before that, I want to just preview, because I've had one-on-ones with all of y'all. And I just want to preview a little bit about what I've learned, so that they can help inform the group agreement process, okay? So as you know, I've had in what I call in-depth interviews with every DAC member clustered by sub-area. Those were very, very helpful conversations for me to get a deeper understanding of what's been happening, what the history has been, what the challenges have been, and most importantly, what are our steps for moving forward. And so out of those conversations, I think what you all have come up with in terms of the group agreements, and I'm going to share this on the screen right now so everybody can follow along. Hi. I'd like to spend a little bit more time with you all, just making sure that these group agreements feel comprehensive, that they are ones that you feel like you can adopt, that you can socialize, that you can practice. Even today, starting tonight, they're going to be kind of the ground rules, and we're going to test them this evening, that you utilize to ensure that your meetings are productive, that you're adhering to the agenda, that all voices are heard, and that there's a protocol for if there is discussion that needs to be had about particular topics, you can do that at a time that doesn't impede the work that is already on the agenda and is respectful of everyone's time. Okay, is everyone following and tracking? Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the group agreements that you all came up with. And Grover, bear with me. I'm going to make these as big as I can so that everybody can read.
I can't read it either, so.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I will walk through them. And if you have questions about any of this, or if this feels fuzzy, let's talk about it. Our objective is, one second, Grover. Our objective is to make sure these feel comprehensive. If there are group agreements that are missing that should be added, let's update this in real time. Okay, and talk about exactly what they mean in practice as well. Grover, do you have a question?
Yeah, I actually do. That this is called the group agreements. It needs, in my opinion, a significant amount of work so that we can get the work done that we need to get done.
Okay.
A lot of stuff that fills the agenda is informational, but it isn't the discussion that we need to have if we look at what our purpose is as per our bylaws, etc. We have a lot of in-depth evaluation work that we're supposed to be doing, and our agenda rarely, using today's example, rarely spends time on that. So when we respect the time on the agenda, I don't know that getting bit and piece information is really how this group will best accomplish what it's here to accomplish.
Okay,
If
well,
it's
let's
just
talk about it.
through time and go through and smile, that's one thing, but if we're supposed to do the work to forward the district towards its future, and then make, informed
Mhm.
recommendations to the board of directors, our meetings are not, they need some more work, and this doesn't cover that.
Okay,
Okay.
well, let's figure out, so here's what I'm gonna do. I am totally for critique, but I'm gonna push y'all. I'm gonna be the teacher, I'm channeling my inner Ally. Okay, I'm gonna put y'all to work. You can't just tell me that this isn't it. If it isn't it, then what is it? Okay, what are the group agreements that need to be included in here so that you can practice adhering to the agenda? And I'm gonna hold, this is also the grounds for holding y'all accountable. You can't just say adhering to the agenda and then enter into the conversation and take you in a different direction than the agenda, all right? So we are going to practice this. But it has to feel like these group agreements are at least comprehensive and can directly tackle the challenges that you all have been experiencing around this too. Because Grover, you are right. We do need some ground rules so that you all have a North Star to move you forward, right? So let's get into it. I want to start with a refresher. On this mural board, under challenges, okay? We have adhering to the agenda, unbalanced participation. Does everybody understand what that means? Unbalanced participation, meaning we're hearing some voices more than others and vice versa, okay? Respecting access needs. That means that different people are coming with different mobility needs, accessibility needs, legibility needs. And so we need to do the best of our ability to meet those access needs so that everybody can participate. The us versus them mentality. I learned a lot about this through the in-depth interviews. We're gonna dig into this, okay? And really try to understand where folks are coming from. We are going to agree to disagree. That is healthy and productive, okay? But we can't continue without a unified vision gearing you towards your trajectory, which allows you to achieve your charter and your role and your purpose, okay? So we need to dig into this. And to Grover's point, maybe that requires, I believe it probably requires tackling the elephant in the room and dedicating time on an agenda, not tonight's agenda, a different agenda about what that means. Us versus them mentality, this came up. Sheila, you and I kind of talked about
Yes,
this.
and I caught that there.
Yeah.
I missed something that you said when you were explaining.
Yeah, does that make sense? Okay. Lack of shared context and understanding of issue areas. There's a lot of new members, right? There's folks without context and folks are feeling like they can't participate because they have no idea what's being talked about or what's not being talked about. We need to get to the bottom of that as well, okay? So those are the challenges that were named in our last session. Are there any other challenges that we need to name and add to this list? So sum it up. Yeah,
I'm echoing in my mind is how I would like more discussion and more evaluation as a group. More
okay,
time
yeah,
for us to delve into things and share a lot of ideas and brainstorm.
okay,
Does that
yeah, go ahead.
Does that fall under the last one, lack of shared context and understanding of issue area?
Yeah,
I think so.
I think it's
Part of our
also,
use
I think it's also different though,
Okay.
Anita, that,
Yeah.
and Grover's speaking to this too, there's a lack of time to actually dive into the issues in a way that allows for context sharing, information sharing, and if there is any, decision-making and or recommendations. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna make that a little bit more explicit. All right, so in response to the challenges, these are the agreements that you all have come up with. They are not complete, we can continue adding to them. So respecting time specific to agenda items. Okay, so that means when we're in a specific section of an agenda, that means all comments and discussion are in direct relation to that agenda item. If you have something that you would like to say that would steer us in a different direction, what I'm recommending is that the co-chairs offer that it be submitted for a future agenda. Okay? So that there is actually time and place for that discussion. People can prepare, information can be shared in advance, context setting can happen. Okay, so that is something that we're gonna practice tonight as we move through the agenda to see how it flows. Okay, how do folks feel about that agreement? Do folks understand what that would look like in practice, just in theory? Alex?
I like the idea of having it, asking for more time in the next agenda. I'm wondering if there's a way to have the transparency, because I know, like, for example, I've submitted something to be on the agenda and it didn't really show up. And like it did, but it got put underneath another category and I never got the chance to share what I wanted to say on the matter. So I'm just wondering if there would be more, I mean, I don't need to know how the agenda is decided upon every time, because that's not as interesting to me, but just like having more transparency about like, okay, if I submit for extra time on the next agenda, is that gonna happen? Why isn't it happening, kind of thing?
Okay, so let's talk about that for a moment, process-wise. Again, nothing that we're saying here is set in stone. We're in ideation mode. If you had a topic that you would like to discuss, and it is relevant to your role, it is not out of scope to be discussing it. I want to be very clear. This is not a grab all, right? To be campaigning about things. This is, hey, there's something specific to the Park and Recreation District. Either it's specific to my sub area or another sub area that I'm supporting, vice versa. I would like to bring it to attention to my fellow DAC members to understand if there's a recommendation we should be making or a discussion that needs to be had, right? What process would feel like a little bit more transparent? For instance, I recommended to staff that there be a feedback form that you all can fill out after every meeting at your discretion. That feedback form also includes agenda items that you would like to submit. That way, there's a way to track those requests. And you can say, okay, I would like this agenda item to be on this specific day so that I can provide more context, provide more information to my fellow DAC members. It can end up in the packet. Jessica, thank you for supporting me and putting it in the packet, etc. That's one idea. Are there other ideas for making sure that agenda items are submitted and end up on agendas? Yeah. Joel.
This is just kind of thinking out loud, but, and I'm regretting it as I'm saying it. I don't want more emails, but, I mean, I think there's a process now, the agenda submission, for general public or DAC members. I don't know how many we actually receive or tether, each given month, but could the DAC as a group be copied on those like any other correspondence that we get? I'm thinking more in terms of not to, put like pressure on, it to be included on the agenda, but I think it may spark some imagination amongst us if it was an issue that maybe we hadn't considered or we wanted to add some context to or whatever. I don't know if that would necessarily solve the problem of what Ali's getting to necessarily, but it, and again, I don't.
Yeah, no, I
kind of thinking out loud, it's just an idea. It seems like it may be something simple to do as well, that wouldn't require a bunch of staff time, things like that.
Yeah, no, I think it's an excellent idea. I mean, my objective for y'all is to be self-sustainable, so I don't want to put any more work on the staff's plates, right? So if there's a feedback form or a mechanism where you all are getting, I mean, the feedback that's shared after each meeting does affect or impact y'all, right? It is in response to something that has happened in a meeting that you all have to work through. So it does make sense that you would have some way of at least seeing or having staff translate what that feedback is, what those agenda items are, so that you can work through them as a group. Given capacity. I don't want to sign folks up for things they don't have capacity for, but just an option. Any other thoughts or ideas around this?
Related to the agenda item request, there is an expectation that if you ask for an item to be put on the agenda that you want to talk about, that you prepare for it.
Yeah.
And that you have some, other than just showing up and start talking about it, because it's appropriate that staff is supposed to do the same. So I think we need to be out to the same. Understand.
Just for the record, you're making direct eye contact with me. I haven't been throwing a bunch of, what about this? So I like your point.
Well, I think, there is a form that we have, and, if you want to ask us to reinvent the wheel before the next meeting, it's not gonna happen, right? So if you'd like to reinvent the wheel, I'd like to see you try to do it. If, I guess what I'm trying to say is, if there's something that you'd like to discuss, I hope that you're going to either ask staff to prepare something for that and give them time to do so. Or you're gonna prepare something yourself that you want everyone to chime in.
Yeah.
Right? I guess that's where I'm coming from,
Absolutely.
having done this now for a year.
Mhm. Absolutely, and you can even create a template for it, right? So it could be the issue, the problem, your point of view, and why you think it's important for the DAC to discuss, with a series of questions that you'd like the DAC to consider, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time, you can come with a framework, everyone can utilize that framework, and that way it's structured. We theoretically have a sense for how much time it will take. And if things go over the agenda, you still use that framework to continue the discussion. Right, so that you're not moving in circles, but moving towards a trajectory of understanding what the DAC should do, recommend, have a point of view on, et cetera. Great addition, Mark. Other thoughts, Grover?
I want to be careful that I'm not over balancing the participation,
Okay.
but I do
great.
have
I
things.
love that self-awareness.
Well, I am, yes. So the point of it is, from the beginning of the first DAC meeting ever, we talked about having a parking lot where ideas that don't get
Mhm.
addressed go into a organized function that shows any progress has been made. So it's set up to be part of a system to keep it alive and moving forward. And then from that longer list is where we would draw things for agendas, et cetera, as opposed to independently, everyone has to keep their own records, their own
Mhm.
whatever, and to do it. So it's a systemic thing, and there's been a lot of work that's gone into it in the past, and it is still stalled out, and in
Okay, so
other
we're gonna
groups
fix that.
and other groups or organizations I've been involved in, it's been more effectively done. And I wish we would, because
All right, well, I think we're here, Grover. We've come up with a potential solution.
what was that?
The feedback form, which could function also as a community garden, I don't like a parking lot, we don't. Let's go like community gardens.
Okay,
That's where ideas come,
so
right?
actually, I don't understand how what you said affects what I said, because it doesn't already exist. You
No,
can
I'm
still
saying
be,
we're going to create it, Grover. That's
Create
what I'm
what?
saying. We're gonna create a feedback forms that allows you to, one, share feedback about a meeting, two, submit agenda items, three, add to the community garden, which in your paraphrasing is the parking lot, but they're ideas for future discussion. They can do all those things at once.
Yeah, okay, things on our plate
Yeah.
that we responsibly should. Because the other thing I noticed on here is that we have this about us versus them, but then we have revisit vision, purpose, and goals.
Mhm.
I would love to have us work off our vision,
Purpose
purpose and goals.
Okay.
And I find it remotely absent, or I don't know how to say it, but it ain't present.
Okay, well, let's stick to what we're talking about right now.
This
which
is.
Respecting
I,
time on the
I don't
agenda.
wish to
I'm
suggest
gonna
it
keep
was.
us focused, okay, Grover, I'm gonna keep us focused. So we're gonna circle back to what you just said, which is purpose, vision, and mission, because I think it's very important. Because you all need a North Star. And I heard in in-depth interviews that a lot of folks do not understand what the DAC is focused on right now, which is a huge issue. So we're gonna solve for that. So I'm gonna put that in the community garden. We're gonna come back to it and let that idea grow, okay? The next group agreement is creating space for individual reflection, lean in, lean back. Do folks have context for this? Do we remember what this means? No, okay. So, good, I'm glad people are being honest. They're like, I don't remember what we did last month. Creating space for individual reflection. That means that a lot of folks voice that there are issues that come up. And a lot of folks feel like they need to have a point of view immediately. And they hope that a group agreement could be that if an issue is introduced, given that we have a new framework where somebody submits an agenda item and they come prepared to provide context, that sometimes folks can engage in immediate decision-making and or provide recommendations and or provide a point of view. So you all said, let's build in time for individual reflection. Either we have a break during the DAC meeting, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, just to collect our thoughts, okay? And that becomes integrated into your practice, into your meetings, so that folks can kind of reflect, have a point of view, and feel comfortable sharing. Does that feel familiar to folks? Okay, all right. Lean in, lean back is if you hear your own voice a lot, you lean back. If you don't hear your own voice, you lean in, right? So it's making sure that there's equitable participation across this room. That one makes sense? Still feel good? Okay. Okay, Grove, we're back at the community garden. Look how fast we got back. Revisit vision, purpose, and goals. Okay, let's talk about this.
You skip short breaks?
Yeah, because I just mentioned it.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, short breaks.
Oh, okay.
Those are kind of, we can conflate the
Okay.
two a little bit.
Okay.
And I'll make that more clear once I update this. Revisit vision, purpose, and goals. Let's talk about this. Back over to you, Grover. Why do you think this is important? Why is this why should this be a group agreement?
Well, first of all, I actually think we should, if nothing else, be very clear about what our purpose is.
Uh-huh,
And I don't think that's present.
okay,
And I think what our purpose is, okay, so the only place I know to look for our purpose is in our bylaws.
yeah,
Okay, good. And it says our job is to, and I'm gonna add some words that aren't here, but it is to,
why would you add words that aren't there?
I will do it and you can now see why I did it. Because the goal is to evaluate and address programs and facilities and to address challenges, desires. Well, all of that implies to be informed as opposed to just having an opinion. So what I'm adding is to be informed
Okay.
and evaluate based on being informed, as opposed to a group of people sitting around sharing their opinions based on, well, what do you think of popcorn? Well, I think popcorn is pretty good, but I don't think it should be too salty and yada, yada.
Okay,
So it needs to be tied to where we're trying to get to.
okay,
What's our job?
Okay.
Our job is to advise the board of directors, but we do it as informed people, and we also do it as we are no longer just folks on this committee. We are representatives of our sub areas. So where's the communication with our sub areas?
Mhm.
Are we working to build that or not?
Okay.
And that hasn't been a topic in this group, to my knowledge, other than my voice.
So
And
it
a few
sounds
others.
like we have several topics that we can submit on the feedback form, worthy of discussion about purpose, about engagement, about making sure that everybody's clear on the North Star. That's where we start, right? Easy peasy. That was easy. Okay. So I feel like the interpretation of that is that you all tell me, it feels like it's challenging to do that type of work when you have other agenda items that may be timely. So what is the suggestion for how you get there? So you have agenda items that are set for every meeting, and yet you have to do some deeper work around purpose, goal setting, et cetera. So what's the trade-off? How are you gonna accomplish that?
Could you clarify
Yeah.
when you just said that there are certain things that need to be on our agenda?
Mhm.
Okay, I don't know anything that should be or needs to be on our agenda that doesn't fit into this broader context. And you made it sound like, well, these other things pop up. If they don't fit in, then why are we talking about them? So you need to define what you just referred to.
Well, like tonight, we have a budget update, that's one.
That's in our bailiwick. Budget is clearly something that we.
Right, but it's its on its own timeline and trajectory, separate from our goals and purpose.
I
discussion.
don't see that as being separate, that's all. They fit under our goals and our objectives and what we're here to accomplish. So that's the only difference, is it's not an outside thing. It's part of who we are and what we're supposed to review. It talks about.
So I can see from both, I can see your point of view and Grover's point of view. Again, my question is, what is the trade-off? Right? So are you willing to utilize a future meeting to do some goal setting, to revisit your purpose and vision and create shared alignment around what that vision is in service to the budget, in service to the systems plan, right? Or do you need to always prioritize what's on the agenda? I mean, I think this is also a question for staff too. This is a full discussion about what you're willing to prioritize in the interest of making sure that you can be collaborative and productive moving forward. It feels like it would be hard to have a conversation about budget or provide recommendations to the DoD without a shared vision. That's just me. So, Joe, and then on.
I guess, I'm looking at vision, purpose and goals. I mean, they're obviously all interconnected, but vision and purpose are more concrete, in my opinion. The
Yeah.
goals should be fluid.
Yeah.
They should change.
Yeah.
And so I guess an idea would be, I mean, we just did this in the county board I'm on for the advisory board to Milwaukee Community Centers. Even an annual goal setting with the understanding those are gonna change. But it gives us a framework to work on, projects, whatever it may be. Things that we know are coming up, budget, things like that. Don't necessarily need to be listed, but it could be aspirational too. But all that being said, the vision needs to be more clearly defined from kind of the start.
Okay.
At least as far as understanding, I think. And that would be purpose as well. I mean, it does exist. And then the goals would be kind of more of a living organism.
That's great, Joel.
But I think an annual, like devoting some time to that, maybe it's separate of, our standing meeting, whether it's a retreat, whatever. It could be a couple hours, whatever it is, to be devoted to goal setting would be, I think, valuable. But it would definitely need some structure.
For sure. Those are great ideas. Great ideas. I mean, those are the trade-offs, right? You're gonna be, spending more time.
Right.
Figuring out what's your vision, reaffirming your purpose, and then having that inform goals, and then having that inform agenda items, right? Based on goals and based on other things that inherent to this work have to come to the agenda for recommendations to the board of directors.
And the only thing I'd add is, I mean, the way I see that is though that's built into an annual, biannual, whatever, because this board changes.
Yeah.
Rapidly at times.
Yeah.
And so getting that annual kind of refresher is really what's gonna make we're all on the same page. I think that's gonna be an important part, is that it's not a one-time done thing. It's actually built into our schedule, like an election.
100%.
Well, I really like what you said, so I forgot what I was gonna say, but it's really good. I like it because I see now, yes, if we could do the generalized sense of what our purpose is and really understand what we're trying to accomplish, then we could apply it to all the things such as budget, this, that, whatever, park naming, whatever it is. But if we had that general thing, so like a once a year kind of thing, because
Yes.
people come and go on this body,
Right.
would be awesome.
Sheila.
Just in other meetings that I've been involved with, having each meeting start with the review of agreements. And then also the vision and purpose, having that someplace visually on your agenda or whatever, so that it's easy to refer to.
Love it. Thank you, Sheila. Ally?
I forgot what I was gonna say too. It was something.
You're so inspired.
I know it was. It'll come back to me and it's gonna be in the middle of something that's not relevant.
That's okay. Okay, I'm just tracking all these great recommendations. Thoughts from others we haven't heard from? You've been quieter. I'd love to hear your voice.
Yeah, keep looking. I don't wanna have another one here.
Yeah.
But I do get that.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
We do.
Well, I think it does tie into the overall, what Grover was saying about just like. At the very base of, representing our community and talking to people. And kind of vision and purpose. My challenge thing is like. Where that engagement starts and the tools that we were given. Part of that's the onboarding process, like I would have loved to just be like handed a packet that says. Like, here's some PowerPoint templates that are, NCPRD, everything's in there.
Toolkit.
Yeah, little toolkit, and because that's where we have to start to then come into every meeting with actually fulfilling what we joined this to do. And I think part of the agreement of that would have to be some sort of, again, it's committing more time, but for all of us, but committing to some sort of like expectation of every quarter you do a full listening session or do some sort of survey and get the word out. I don't know, maybe that's a resource tool, but but yeah, I think that's what I'd like to see more of, so that way when we do have time for our comments, it's not just like activities for the coming month or activities that passed, but something great you heard from just putting up some flyers with QR code to a survey. Just something like something passive we can do to get input.
Yeah, so it begs the question, what's the engagement framework that you're using to make sure that you're truly representing your sub areas and the insights and recommendations from community? What are your engagement goals and objectives, which can be a part of the goal setting? Like a part of the retreat, if y'all want to do a retreat, you should be thinking about what your engagement goals are. How many touch points do you want? How do you support sub areas that don't have the foundation of engagement, right? Where are those gaps? How do you fill those gaps? How are we going to share the best practices that we know to be effective for reaching community? And then you go ask staff for support, or, you know, if folks feel inclined, collaborating deeply with staff, because there are brand guidelines. We don't want to step outside of brand guidelines for the county, but an engagement toolkit to make sure that you have everything that you need to do those engagement activities. Yeah. Great. See what happens when you speak up. Okay, Ally, did it come back to
It
you?
did, and
Okay.
it's not too far removed, so.
Okay.
I was just gonna say something about, what Anita had mentioned. I first of all really love this idea of a retreat. I'm like a campy person, so I'm all for it.
So you're bringing the snacks.
Definitely, yes, wine and cheese. specifically. But I was gonna say, I feel like I just wanna clarify or just mention that I think doing a yearly retreat is great. I also just want to mention that doesn't mean that we have to get rid of all the goals and come up with all new ones. Because I think sometimes that can sound really daunting, but that's the expectation. Because there's definitely going to be some goals that are going to be multi-year. So just if that's the direction that we go and we all agree to do a retreat, then I just want to point out that you guys all just worked really hard just a year ago making new goals.
Yeah.
I think the retreat could be a really great way to reflect on what was in the past, like the last year's goal. Do you want to keep any? Do you want new ones? But that was my comment.
I think that's great. And yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. We did go through a goal setting exercise. You should revisit that as a starting point. Scratch what doesn't feel relevant, build off what does. And then you have your foundation and you keep on building on that foundation year after year. Or if things change, you can move to quarterly, not that you need quarterly retreats, but you're revisiting the goals to make sure that they feel robust and representative of the changing landscape of the district. Okay. Great recommendations. Any other additions or things we need to work through?
I don't know if this is too long, and I wrote it to you this afternoon.
Oh, yeah, I
Probably
saw
haven't
that.
seen
I
it.
saw
I
that.
thought maybe I'd just read one paragraph
Okay.
and try not to take up, bore everybody did. Anyway, I wrote that I think one of the DAC's most important functions is outreach. Delivering ideas from residents to NCPRD staff and the board of directors, and in the other direction, reporting to residents about NCPRD matters. I see this as one of the biggest challenges of being on the DAC. And most important function, I think, one of them. And how to achieve broad, effective outreach hasn't been discussed in this group. And some of us have networks of contacts in our sub areas or multiple sub areas, like e-newsletters, that sort of thing, so we can get the word out about events or opportunities or issues. And some of us are part of groups like the Friends of the Trolley Trail, Friends of River Villa Park, etc., several more friends groups. And then there are also CPOs of lesser or greater liveliness. Some are kind of asleep and some are more active. And so there's numerous entities, especially in Milwaukee, though, that contribute a great deal to NCPRD visibility and connectivity with the residents in that sub area. But there's a lot more to do. there's a whole lot more to do, I think, to make NCPRD visible to the community as a whole and to establish and maintain a lot of communication in multiple directions. And it's not easy, and I think we should explore it.
Great, that was beautiful.
Thank you.
There's a lot of synergy around this table around outreach and engagement. And so I think that's definitely something to prioritize and think through sooner rather than later, because there's a lot. I think of aspirations and needs that folks want. And if you have goals and a North Star to advocate on community behalf, then your energy is well spent, right? And you're not circulating on issues here, but out in community and collaborating on what difference you can make. Great. Okay, so you just heard my timer go off. I want to be respectful of the time I have on this agenda. So, what I'll say is, this is great. How do folks feel about this conversation? Good? Do you have clarity? Somewhat so? So in terms of, 1 second, Grover, what I'm going to do is clean this up a little bit. And this is our starting point for group agreements. Like I said, I want us to start practicing them this evening, but this is our starting point for our group agreements. And what we'll have to do is figure out what it looks like in practice to move from the challenge to the agreement to any resources and tools that need to be developed so that this becomes a part of your everyday practice for when you meet. Okay? So that'll be my homework, to send you a revised version, but in the meantime, let's start to practice some of these group agreements this evening. Sound good? Okay, I'll pass the mic back over to you, Aaron, or Mark, sorry.
Did someone else have a mo? Did you have a?
I did.
Oh, Grover, I'm sorry, yes,
That's
go
okay.
ahead.
So I love what Daniel had said.
Yeah.
And did it make it too, because I can't read the small writing up there.
Yes.
So you added another box,
I did.
which is something like outreach to some areas.
Yeah, I added, what is our outreach/engagement framework? These agreement can be to perhaps create some outreach and engagement goals and objectives and share practices. And the resource is perhaps an engagement toolkit with a one pager with a slide deck so that you're equipped to go out into community.
Thanks. I just didn't know it got up there
Yeah,
because I
no.
can't read the little writing.
Yeah, thanks, Grover, I appreciate it. Okay, back over to you, Mark.
All right, thank you. We're doing good on our time frame right now. The next thing is a presentation from Kelly and Kia on the fiscal year 2025-26 budget for the district. Take it away. Over there. Okay.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Callie Gantner. I'm Finance Supervisor for NCPRD, and this is Kia Selly, Director for NCPRD. This evening, we'd like to present to you an update on our development for the fiscal year 2025-2026 requested budget. You'll notice that we are maintaining a high-level overview of the requested budget to comply with Oregon budget law. In the interest of time, we request that you hold your questions until the end. Okay, first, we'd like to refresh everyone's knowledge on key components that make up the NCPRD budget structure. The NCPRD budget includes 5 funds. The general fund has the most flexible funds and is where we collect revenue like property taxes and where you'll see our operating expenses. It houses all of our programs like sports, park maintenance, and planning, for example. We have 3 system development charge funds, and this is where we collect SDC permit fees from new development, such as a new apartment building or a major redevelopment, these funds can be used to build new parks and facilities. They cannot be used for ongoing operations. The last fund is our capital projects fund, where we hold funds for our capital projects, such as a new park at the Concord property, and large repairs and replacements of district assets, such as the repairs of the spa to the, here at the Park. Provided here are those terms used throughout our budget that are important to understand. I won't go over each one of these, but rather highlight a couple. So reserves are funds that we set aside. They're reserved for future spending. This is essentially our savings account. We cannot dip into these funds during the year, even with a supplemental budget. And capital outlay is the budget category for funding assets with a value of $10,000 or more and a useful life of more than 1 year. So we're not talking here about budgeting for grass seed or that repair to the spa here at the aquatic park. And again, here's the current fiscal year budget totaling 61.5 million. We have the budget broken down into 2 buckets, operating and non-operating expenses. Operating expenses are directly related to our programs and daily operations and provide funding to our 5 lines of business. Administration, program and community centers, older adult services, parks, trails and natural areas, and planning and development. Operating expenses include personnel costs and materials and services associated with these 5 lines of business. Non-operating costs total 49.8 million and include capital improvement projects such as a new park, capital repair and replacement projects such as the spa, repairs here at the Aquatic Park, interfund transfers, contingency, and reserves. And just as a side note, interfund transfers, contingency, and reserves tend to make the budget appear larger, as they are not actual expenses to be spent in the current budget. An integral part of our budgeting process is projecting revenue and expenses for the current fiscal year. Estimating the year-end revenues and expenses gives us an idea of how much money we have to work with for the next fiscal year. In this table, I've broken out our adopted 2024-2025 budget, the 2024-2025 projection, and the dollar and percent increase. Actual revenues have increased by 20% when compared to the adopted budget for the current fiscal year. And while that looks great, we'd like to offer the contributing factors to the increase, which are the sale of the Clackamas and Wichita properties. These should be considered an anomaly as the district does not have additional properties to sell in future years. Increased interest, which varies based on the amount of money we have in the bank, and rates tend to fluctuate with the economy. SDC revenue is also rather unpredictable. I'd also like to note that we exclude interfund transfers when computing our projections, since they have a 0 net effect on the budget and projections. In this table, you'll see our projected year-end expenses, with all of them projected to decrease. Staff have made cuts to the current fiscal year budget to better position NCPRD for the future. We will dive into these cuts in the next slide. I'd like to note that contingency, reserves, and interfund transfers are not included in the table because these categories are not actual expenses. Interfund transfers, again, have a 0 net effect on the budget and projections.
The significant changes we're strategizing to make in the next budget cycle for fiscal year 25-26 are meant to hold harmless the general fund and really reserve the fund balance for ongoing operations. We're thrilled to share that we're discussing a large donation that will close our funding gap for the older adult nutrition services program, enabling NCPRD to continue to provide meals for older adults without any reductions in service. I expect to share more next month. So we've been working really hard to make this happen, and we are very excited. So stay tuned for more.
Also, last week, the NCPRD board approved fee increases that will be effective July 1st of this year, just in time for budget preparation. So fees are approximately 4% of our budget. So this is, again, really significant. We haven't had fee increases since 2022. So I want to thank our board for making that a priority. NCPRD staff have also been working really hard, again, as Callie said, to make some cuts to the current fiscal year budget while maintaining all of the services and programs that our district residents enjoy. So one of the strategies is prioritizing SDC, system development charge funding for capital projects. Eliminating general fund support for the Reclamville. This is something that we're considering one time for next fiscal year. Eliminating the large summer concert in the park. We'll continue to support other planned summer concerts at neighborhood parks as well as movies in the park, but this is the one large summer concert. Eliminating one director level position. So this will impact the capacity of the director level portion of our team, but we feel like it's the right move at this time. And also instituting a hiring freeze for new full-time positions that require general fund. We are also reducing printing costs. I know that I've talked with many of you about this, reducing printing costs for marketing of events, programs, and projects, and really trying to go to more of an electronic strategy that's also a sound sustainability strategy, and reducing some of our turf maintenance. And we're really testing this out where we don't want to damage our fields. So this will be somewhat of an iterative process. We are, again, really approaching this next budget cycle with the intention to make the least impact on our district residents. We recognize that many of these are one-time cuts and there'll still be challenges ahead for the district in future budget cycles unless we're able to generate more general fund revenue. And the situation that we find ourselves in with limited general fund revenues is because our current revenues really have not kept pace with inflation. Our permanent tax rate is only 54 cents per thousand of assessed value. And this tax rate was set in 1990. And at the event that we held on Saturday, I talked with many district residents, and we all got a bit of a chuckle about how many things in our lives still cost the same over 34 years. Well, NCPRD is the one thing that still costs the same. So, but that's really been a challenge for us. And I don't know if everybody can see this chart, but it's really a helpful image. So I'm going to walk you through it in the event that you can't read the text. So on the far left is North Clackamas Parks and Recreation District at 54 cents per 1,000 of assessed value. To the right is Tualatin Hills Park and Rec. They have a permanent tax rate of $1.31. They have an additional bond of 28 cents per 1,000 of assessed value. And then they just recently passed a levy, local option levy at 50 cents per 1,000. So you can see how behind we are in terms of revenue. To the right of that block is Bend. Their fixed rate is at $1.46, and they have a bond rate of 16 cents. And bonds typically are for building things. The permanent tax rate is that flexible general fund money intended for operations. And then I'm going to go to the far right, which is Willamette. They're located down around Salem. And their fixed rate is at $2.01 per 1,000 of assessed value with a bond rate of 18 cents per 1,000. The last one is Chehalem. And even though it's much less than the rest of the three industry partners to the left, they are still almost twice what an NCPRD's rate is. So I think this is really, we talked about a slide deck to share with the community. I think this would be a really important slide to show to the community because it really shows the kernel of the challenge. I'll also add that the planned 50 million capital bond measure that was talked about in our first plan has never been presented to voters, which would fund new parks and facilities. So we really have a greater reliance on system development charge funds. And our system development charge funds fees for new development and major redevelopments, those are really insufficient in terms of keeping pace with inflation too. So if we're thinking about queuing up the next project beyond the system plan, it would be working on updating some of those SDC rates.
Here's the public budget calendar. So back in November, we had the budget 101 overview and priorities discussion with all of you and the budget committee members. And now here we are back in February, back with both groups again to have a high level requested budget preview. This is also another opportunity for Sheila, our DAC liaison, to share the group's thoughts with the budget committee. In May, after the proposed budget is ready, we will have a joint meeting where we will give a high-level overview of the information we plan to bring forward in the annual budget committee meeting. In late May, the annual budget committee will review the approved budget. In June, the NCPRD Board of Directors will adopt the budget.
So that's it for our presentation tonight, and we both recognize there's a lot of redundancy here, but we want you all to know this stuff as well as we do. So I appreciate you walking through some of this, I know for the second time. But again, we're all starting to get, I think, a list of talking points to share with other district residents about the state of NCPRD. So hearing all of that, we're open to any questions you have.
I have a few. Could you go back to the slide with the pie charts?
Sure.
Second slide or third slide? Okay, so
I'm trying to make that a little bigger too.
it shows, older adult services 12%. I tried to go back and look at the budget, the current adopted budget, and I couldn't. It's kind of a little bit of apples and oranges to compare. But is that number down? And is that, and I guess that goes along with your piece about the potential $180,000 from the foundation. You're trying to get them to pick up more of what has been on the general fund's burden, I take it.
So the older adult services are funded with some NCPRD general fund and then some grants and donations. So it's an amalgamation of those different sources. And so to answer your question, yes, in order for us to use less of our beginning fund balance, which is the goal, which keeps us solvent for a longer period of time, you know, thinking back to that forecast that we shared with you back in the fall. If we can reduce our reliance on beginning fund balance, we have a longer runway for solving our general fund revenue issue. So that would be the goal, is to get more in donations, reduce our general fund subsidy so that we're reducing the reliance on beginning fund balance. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so. Do we think that, and this may be kind of may become a moot question in the new administration in Washington, but do we think that it's always been weird to me that these services aren't run by Health and Human Services, that they're run by NCPRD, right? That it seems to me the county has a Health and Human Services department. Do we feel like we have I mean, I assume you consult with them and you know what the federal and state funding pools are, but do we feel like we've drawn all of that funding that we can get for these services?
So you're asking really good questions. Thank you. And so we do believe that we have requested the maximum funding available. That doesn't mean we can't continue that conversation with Health and Human Services. Typically, and this is interesting to me, is that typically the money is actually funneled through the county
provided to the cities, and the cities provide those services and often actually subsidize those services with some of their own general funds. So it is somewhat unusual for a park and rec organization to be spending the amount of money that we're spending for older adult services. Although you'll see like City of Lake Oswego, Parks and Rec receive some general fund. And they provide some older adult services as part of their services. However, they're a city, so it's a little bit different because they don't have a dedicated funding source that generates their general fund. They're getting general fund allocated. But my point is typically those services are provided by cities. So it is unusual for NCPRD to be
Because
providing
we're,
these services.
I mean, the only city is only 20% of the population base, right?
Right,
So it's,
yes.
that's the anomaly here.
So again, you're asking really good questions, and so, Candy Ho, Recreation Services Division Director, and I were just talking the other day about how it would be really useful to do a deep dive on this particular topic, because it is so unusual, in terms of NCPRD's role. So we hope to queue that up either late spring or early summer, so we can provide more information to you, because it is difficult to just look at the budget document and understand that situation entirely.
And, that sounds good. I look forward to that. I guess my worry is I doubt, I mean, I don't know I have no idea what the finances of the Milwaukee Community Center Foundation are, but I could imagine that gift would tap them out in terms of their bank account balance. And so it wouldn't be something that's sustainable year after year.
So, so I'm gonna let that organization remain unnamed officially. But you're right, we cannot ask a partner organization that's a private organization relying on donations to deliver a large quantity of resources year over year. And so it is a one-time funding measure, and it requires us all to start thinking and working on solving the real problem, which is our limited general fund revenue.
One other question in that is, I was trying to, you've got parks, trails, and natural areas, and you've got programs and community centers. So is the aquatic center a community center? Is that the aquatic center under that, that piece of the pie?
Yeah.
Okay. And then in the budget, I don't know, this may not be a fair question. But in the budget, there was a reference to $3.2 million in ARPA funding. I knew that the new library was being ARPA funded, but did that 3.2 million, I didn't know that NCPRD got ARPA funding. Is that also being spent on Concord?
It's it's kind of a complicated answer. So we've received ARPA funding as a reimbursement for revenue we lost from shutting down.
Just what is ARPA?
American Rescue Plan.
Thank you. During the COVID.
It was the COVID relief, yeah.
So we received revenue, we call it revenue replacement dollars. And so that money went into our general fund. So it's we used it to sort of replace staffing costs for last fiscal year.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Yeah, just while you're on that same thing, could you explain whether that 12% is general fund money or the total cost of the program from all sources, including things like health and human services or whatever?
12% for what? I'm sorry.
Right here and that green.
For older adult services.
Older adult services, it said 12%. Is that general fund money, or is that all sources of money, including other things that are not NCPRD money?
So that 12% would be expenses. So of the total operating expenses for the year, for this fiscal year is 11.7 million. And so older adult services is 12% of that. So
That's 1.4 million. I did the math. So given that, does that money come from NCPRD or does it come from other sources is really the question, not that it's an expense, but what's the source of funds? Given the conversation about other money coming in and so on and so forth.
Combination.
So that is not NCPRD money, that is money that NCPRD is spending, but it came from other sources.
No, it's largely NCPRD money.
Okay, it'd be
Yeah.
a valuable thing from my perspective to know how much it's NCPRD versus like the question that Lisa asked about other funding sources and why is it all listed as NCPRD when in fact NCPRD has human services money, Medicare
Well,
money,
it's-
whatever money.
It's broken down in the budget. So in the budget, we actually have line items for the grants and the donations and for our subsidy.
Right,
Tonight, we did a roll up
Okay, good.
because when we do a budget presentation, we don't get like really that deep into all of the different amount and sources of funds.
okay,
But what this is showing is just kind of on it's trying to show the order of magnitude for operating expenses. That's how I would read it. So of the 11.7 million of operating expenses, these are the different chunks that are allocated to different aspects of the organization.
okay. And so then following on from that, look, I don't want to see that chart, but the chart that says 54 cents per thousand and so on and so forth, and how we compare. It did some little bit of research in, so things don't cost the same. But by the same token, that's 54 cents per thousand. In the last 24 years, the property values have gone up 162%. That's piece one. So it isn't the same amount, it keeps growing.
3% a year.
Yeah,
No, what's three?
It's taxed. It's
Yeah.
property tax, it's state statute.
Okay, so it is like our property tax and it's lagging behind, and so it's
Yeah,
3%.
it's
I
lagging.
didn't do that
yeah,
math. Okay.
unless someone has a major renovation
Or
or
they
a
sell the
major
house
sale.
and now the.
That's
house
right,
is-
then it's
Then it's
reset,
reset.
Right,
yeah.
so it's a fuzzy thing there. And then the other thing I checked on is inflation since 2000 to 2024 is listed as 3%. Now, I don't know how they got that number and I don't want to argue it, but it's like we need to look
Where
in.
are you listing inflation as 3%?
Chair, can we do a time check as well?
Yeah, I don't-
We're a
No, they
couple
don't
minutes.
wanna.
So inflation hasn't been holding at 3%. So you just had historic inflation. So why don't you and I talk offline about the 3%?
Great. And then the last thing I want to ask about is, I appreciate, and I really appreciate what you explained, that the transfer is not, but then why do we keep showing it? Because in truth, we don't know where that money came from. We don't know where that money's going, and I don't want to solve that now, but it's an ongoing question I have. It doesn't help us to see it that way, and I don't tell you guys I keep books, because you know a lot more about than I do. But that's why it's there. So we have a 30% reserve. And then we spend the other money on non-operating stuff, and then we list that. I don't understand.
So I can explain, even though I'm a landscape architect, I can explain because I've asked Kelly this many, many times. So it's really an accounting best practice to track where the money came from and where the money goes to. And
Yeah.
so, although the accountants don't like me to say we're double counting the money, in essence, we're doing some double counting because we're tracking where it's coming from and where it's going to. So it's really an accounting best practice.
Mhm.
And we follow those accounting best practices. Actually, our budget wins awards. And so I know that we're doing the right thing, but that's why we always call it out.
Okay,
Because we want to make sure that there's clarity as to why our budget looks so large when actually we're not spending nearly 61.5 million.
okay, good. Thank you for all those questions,
So,
answers.
so of the 49.8 million, those three categories are money that's actually not being spent. Okay.
All right, we are at time, Chair. Is that
We are,
correct? We also have a flag in the chat from Jeanette for a lean forward, lean back reminder. Okay. All right. Back over to you, Chair.
Thank you. So the next item on our agenda is for readouts from our DAC members. And I wanted to see if perhaps you wanted to start with the folks from the budget committee. Liaison to give us a little report out. What's happened so far, and then we can go.
Well, we have a meeting coming up on February 19th, which is next Wednesday from 2 to 3:30. And so I would appreciate if any of you have feedback that you'd like for me to share with the budget committee, that you would email that to me. Unless off the top of your head, you can tell me right now. And that's all I've got.
Anything from your meetings so far?
Well, the last meeting, we've only had the one meeting,
Okay.
and so I reported back on that 2 meetings ago, yeah.
Anyone else? Lisa.
Sure, mark your calendars, March 8th, Saturday is the opening of Milwaukee's 3 new parks. 2 of them are open already, but it's the formal opening, and the third one should open before the end of this month, but that day there'll be kind of a roving, they're kind of like staggered times from noon to 2, I don't know, there's staggered times in the 3 parks, and then sort of for people to go around and see all 3, and then sort of a central celebration in Scott Park near the library at the end of the day at 2:30 to 3 o'clock. And I just want to say, I thought well, that doesn't qualify as a council report, so I'll save it till he is. It's all right.
So Alan made a great point, I think at our last meeting before, that we use plenty of parks that aren't technically in our sub area. This isn't even an NCPRD, but Arrow Heights Park is not far from 4 and 5, and there's a cleanup this Saturday at 9:30. And there's still, you can still RSVP through Johnson Creek Watershed Council.
Yeah, so to add on to Lisa's report out about Parks and Rec, I also wanted to report out. I think Colleen Rockwell, who is our Bee City liaison from Rotary, also sent out an email. But just to kind of explain, so the city of Milwaukee is now a Bee City affiliate. So basically what that means is that we have initiatives in Milwaukee to create more pollinator pathways associated with the pollinator pathway organization. That just means that Milwaukee has a couple of measures that we need to adhere to. But one thing that I wanted to share out to all of you is that it is, although it is like Milwaukee is a Bee City USA, it does not need to stay in Milwaukee. We'd really like to encourage everyone in our area to participate. As Colleen said, bees don't see city lines. So if anyone is interested in just seeing more about how we can engage in different areas of NCPRD to be a part of this, I know that there are some things that we won't be able to implement, like Milwaukee has to adhere to a specific pesticide agreement, and that's not something that we can necessarily implement in NCPRD or in the unincorporated areas. But at least creating a pollinator garden, a neighborhood pollinator garden, if there are individuals who are interested in creating that space in their yards or in their private property, we'd really love to encourage everyone to participate with us. So you are all cordially invited.
How would we do that?
Oh, you can email me.
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, email me.
So, on the day.
Well, I don't know if it's sub-area too, but Stringfield Family Park has a pollinator event every year. And I've been to it and I had a great time, and it has a lot of native plants that are especially, I think, chosen partly for their pollinator support. And I know and some time back, we really looked into what the pesticide use was of NCPRD, but I'm pretty rusty on it now. But maybe we want to look at that again or have a brief refresh on that approach within the parks in the district. And as far as sub-area 2, I have trivia in the sense that people have been requesting benches. And the benches would be, a bench or benches in Rivervilla Park would be great. We have all ages of people coming, but we're also really close to Rose Villa, so that's a lot of senior people, so a bench would be great. That's a request that, when I'm in the park, sometimes I talk to people and ask what they want. And also at Concord, there's a certain spot where if you put a bench, you can watch the fabulous view of the sunset. And so I want to talk to Alex maybe about that, where a bench or benches could be there that aren't currently on the plans, so that it would be a sunset viewing spot and on the property. And other than that, just a heads up, I'll be retiring in June, and we also have a vacancy in sub-area 1. So if there's any ideas anybody has that people who would like to fill those spots, that would be good.
Well, I've been chastised for lean in and lean out, so should I pass or?
No.
Okay,
It's not chastised, Grover, it's accountability.
okay, good. So I want to, it's actually sub-area 1, 2, and 3 all have vacancies that will either are present now or they'll be present by the end of the year. And as a reminder, and I'm glad we got it on the list of things that we're going to do more outreach. Part of the process is to do the outreach within our sub areas to be able to have more people feel connected to what's going on in NCPRD, and also feel that they have a word to say, which then by our theory will encourage more people to be willing to come and join us for these parties. So that's piece one. And the other is as far as bees, there is a Mason bee cocoon cleaning party this weekend. And it's at my house. And I had 9,000 cocoons last year, and I have people who bring their own and clean them, etc. And we talk about best practices and so forth. So if anybody's interested, let me know, and I'll tell you when this weekend, and you're welcome to be there. You get to learn a lot about Mason bees and their downfall from pesticides, etc., and other whatever they call them.
Herbicides?
No, the little bugs and stuff that get.
Like the mites, yeah.
Parasites. Parasites, that's the word. Parasites. Okay, thank you.
I don't know, do I ask, do you, Paul, do you, no, okay, I just didn't want to pass you by.
You can have some of my time if you want. It's all yours, buddy. I'm not gonna steal any thunder, because I know everything is in the division or the report, and there's a lot of cool things that have been happening and will be happening at the one week. So I will piggyback, since we're bee heavy on this side of the table, at least. Have the good fortune of working with Colleen, and Bee City USA for Milwaukee is outstanding. The pollinator pathway, yeah, it doesn't know city lines. Colleen is incredibly passionate about that, and if you get certified, it's a very easy process. You get a really cool little sign, and it's a neat way to get mapped where you can actually track this on the internet too. So it's a very cool program. So I encourage everyone to get involved with that. Yeah. But that's it. I don't have anything else to share.
We have one last one. Is it quick on test?
Yeah, it's really quick. I forgot one thing. I promised a person who's really passionate about theater, who's connected to the Mid-Century Players. I promised him I would say yes. They really want to be considered for events at both community centers.
I wanted to see if Josh or Jeanette had anything from the.
There's nothing in the chat,
Okay,
but I can flag it for both of them then.
and then for myself, I wanted to say that from sub-area 2, I turned in a request about an issue that came up at Risley Park. And that for some damage that was done by some 2 teenagers. And the issue was fixed the same day. So I want to say very much thank you to the staff for taking care of that so quickly.
And Josh has his hand up. Josh, go ahead.
Yeah, I didn't have anything specific to my sub area yet. I'm still sort of kind of getting the, the feel for the, the outreach and that aspect of kind of reaching out to my neighbors. But I just wanted to shout out to Area 1. Last month, my daughter lost a a toy at a park, a stuffed animal, means a lot to her. And the neighborhood around that park, Alma Meyer Park, was very supportive in helping her find it and get it back to her. It was just a very cute, very like, if you need your faith in humanity restored, there it was. It was very nice. So shout out to Area 1 for being awesome.
Very cool story. Thanks, Josh. Jeanette?
Yes, hi, sub area 3, and I don't have an update today, but our next community planning organization or CPO meeting is going to be held on April the 7th on Zoom. So I hope to get some more connection with the community at that. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that update.
So I think we're done with district monthly report, and I will turn it over, excuse me, to the DAC reports. And I'll turn it over to Kia as the district director.
Thank you. So tonight I'm going to start with an update about the Justice property acquisition. And what I mean by that is there was a parcel for sale adjacent to the Justice property located at 13849 Southeast 122nd Avenue. So I wanted to provide an update because several folks have reached out to NCPRD staff about the availability of this property. Unfortunately, that property has been purchased by a private developer. And I do want the NCPRD community to know that staff pursued acquisition of this parcel before it was actually available for purchase on the open market, but unfortunately, NCPRD's offer was not accepted. Again, a private developer now owns the property, and although I remain hopeful that there could be an opportunity in the future to purchase this property adjacent to the NCPRD owned Justice property, I do understand right now that that property is under design for redevelopment. So that's the status update. When I learn more, I'll share more, but I do want you all to know that staff pursued that long before it was actually available for purchase. So we tried our best. On a brighter note, you'll notice that you have a new system plan flyer in your packet. If you haven't gone to the system plan website in a while, please take a look. The address is ncprdsystemplan.com. The consultant team has updated the site with the recently completed assessment work, the final survey report, and a new really cool engagement tool to collect community feedback on priority areas and enhancement projects. The online engagement tool will remain live through the end of this month, and the consultant team will be here in person next month on March 12th here at the DAC to present the latest plan concepts. So I hope that everybody will be able to attend. But please, before that meeting, try to visit that our website and take a look at that tool. I also want to acknowledge the email that Mayor Beatty sent regarding the analysis for the catchment areas around Milwaukee Community Center and the soon to open Concord Community Center. The staff, we actually have a slightly different catchment area because it's really takes into account some of the barriers to accessing the site, like major roads or other land features, or a lack of sidewalks, things like that. But I really want to give that topic a good amount of time because I think that you raised a really great point that probably a lot of people are wondering about. So let's talk about that when we have the consultant here in March. And maybe we can queue up an image and actually talk a little bit more about that with some visuals. So thank you for sharing that. More to come. Construction continues at the Concord property and it's still on track for a grand reopening this fall. We're looking at October. I'm not going to give you a date today, but we're still on track. Finishes and materials for the community center interior are being selected, and so it's starting to feel real, and we're getting really excited. In late January, NCPRD hosted its annual Lunar New Year celebration with over 550 attendees at the Milwaukee Community Center. Earlier this month, NCPRD registration began for spring programming. Although we're in the dead of winter, we're looking ahead to spring. And then just last Saturday, I saw many of you there, thank you. On February 8th at the Milwaukee Community Center, NCPRD held its first ever, and hopefully we will repeat it, design and dinner social event with over 120 attendees. We provided an opportunity for participants to learn about district-wide initiatives and projects, give us input on recreation programming for both the Milwaukee Community Center and the future Concord Community Center, and also participate in some fun crafts. And over the coming months, we'll report out about what we've heard individually about some of the programming and some of the project input. As I shared earlier this evening, the board has approved updated fees effective July 1 of this year. We haven't had fees approved since 2022. And this is based on a board-approved policy that they approved actually last fall that allows for a fee increase of up to 3% each year aligned with the CPI. So if the CPI is less than 3%, of course, it would be less than 3%, but it would never, fees would never go above 3% unless we intentionally ask the board for approval of those specific fees, which we actually did have some fees that we asked for in approval for increases over 3%. So we actually are going to be publishing those new fees in this spring for summer programming. So you'll see some of those fees actually reflected in the spring catalog. So look for that. If you have any questions, ask NCPRD staff. I just want to note that we have this new fee structure. It actually includes a new tiered approach to fees that we actually think are going to allow us to be more flexible in terms of our offerings, as well as to be a little more competitive, because we can actually calculate fees to be a little more exact according to the type of skill level required for the instructor, things like that. And even though a number of fees were increased well beyond the CPI due to some rounding for accounting purposes and ease of cash transactions, I do want to just note that we did all of these fee increases with the mindset that we want to maintain access for the community to our services and programs. So NCPRD still remains really one of the lowest cost providers, if not the lowest cost provider in the region for a lot of these services and programs. But if you have concerns, please reach out to a staff person and share those concerns with us. Later this month, NCPRD will be hosting its first quarterly board meeting of 2025 on February 26th here at the Aquatic Park. Please visit our website for more details, as well as the agenda packet. We'll have the opportunity to welcome our new chair, Chair Roberts, and our new director, Director Fireside at this meeting.
Did you say February 26th?
Yes,
Do we know the time?
6 p.m. And tonight I want to conclude with a recognition letter that we received about some staff here at the Aquatic Park. We're not really sure why, but their tensions have been really high at the Aquatic Park. It's probably because a lot of regional pools are either closed or soon to close, and so we think it's going to probably become more dramatic. Mount Scott Community Center is closed for renovation. East Portland Community Center will soon close for some maintenance, and Oregon City's pool is going to close for some maintenance. So there are a lot of folks accessing the Aquatic Park. And then maybe it also has something to do with New Year's resolutions. Maybe more people are out trying to get good exercise. But anyway, we received this note, about some extraordinary staff. It really highlights the work of, Jason Kemerick. He's an extraordinary manager here at the aquatic park and several of his team members. So it begins, I think you and your staff are amazing. You are unfailingly polite, patient, thoughtful, and considerate in your responses while juggling multiple interactions, rude customers, confused elders, staff questions, and building maintenance issues. Without such brilliant management, the North Clackamas Aquatic Center would not be the rousing success it is. Recently, you patiently talked with a screaming, unreasonable swimmer in the pool. When you finished, someone else walked up to you and yelled at you. Then 3 people asked you questions. Jen at the front desk is warm, friendly, unfailingly polite, and patient. Terry works the front desk, but is also a charismatic water aerobics instructor whose classes are jam-packed. She is beloved by people who take her class. And I think it's Kaya. Is it Kaya or Kaya? Kaya, thank you. Is a lifeguard everyone loves. Friendly, warm, always watchful. She is everyone's favorite. Recently, a new lifeguard Payson is someone everyone likes. She too is friendly, warm, and watchful. This letter could be much longer, raving about you and your staff. What a great group of people. Please forward this email on to whoever is appropriate. Thank you for all you do. So, and Candy is, of course, Recreation Services Division Director, and she leads all of the staff in recreation and events programming. So Candy's had an earful of these events as well. So I also want to thank you, Candy, for your steady hand, your patience, and really your perseverance. Thank you.
Thank you, Kia. This time we are going to open for public comment. I'm sorry.
Sorry,
Mhm.
I just wanted to ask a question about the open house event. You had some board, I look forward to the outcome of, you know, the dot exercises and stuff. But I realize it takes some time to file all that, but you had some boards for Concord in particular that showed like what parts were gonna be open and what parts were not gonna be open to the public. Is that being put up on the website?
At this point, we probably aren't posting that to the website because it's in a very draft form. But I could certainly bring that poster. It's actually just in the other room. So I could definitely bring that to our March meeting and have that up here in the room if you'd like to take another look at it.
Well, that wouldn't be a bad idea for everybody to see it, but I was also just hoping to be able to share it with some people. So, I mean, at some point it'll be on the website.
It will. We're in the process of trying to finesse a very, very tight budget and are a little reticent to publish something and then change it immediately. So we're still working out and sort of fine tuning things. But as soon as we've got that dialed in, we can definitely post that to the website and forward it to you so you can send it along.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll go back to then for public comment. We're going to open this floor now for public comment. First to those, anyone that's here. Do we have anyone here in the audience who would like to speak?
I can hardly hear you, but I will.
Okay.
Well, sitting back here is kind of. I'd like to report there's no teenage damage at the Justice property. We won't have to worry about that unless it really gets developed. There's no garbage out there. Anything that comes is when the east wind blows it from a different neighborhood. The property is enjoyed lately by lots of geese. People and their dogs are out there all the time. In the summer, it's the blackberry pickers. Some of that may go away if they dig out the fence line on the north with whatever might be the new development. Upkeep is minimal. It gets mowed once a month when it's able to get on there with the tractor and not get wet and sink in. So at this point, it is enjoyed, maybe limited amount of people, but if whatever's planned to get done out there, you gotta have access. If you have cars, you gotta build yourself a parking lot. You're gonna have to scrape off all kinds of that grassy field. So at this point, I don't think it's a priority, and listening to some of this, it don't sound like you have a lot of money to spend on that kind of development anyway. So that's my point, being, that's my backyard. 41 years, my backyard. Used to have horses, race horses out there.
I'm sorry, just for the minutes, do you mind sharing your name with us?
Oh, I guess I could. Lynn Cutsforth.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else that would like to speak? Anyone online? I'll go ahead and close public comment then. Next is just to let you know about our next meeting, which occurs on Wednesday, March 12th. If any of you do have anything that you'd like for us to put on the agenda for March, there are some things that are coming up that are going to take some good amount of time. Since we have the consultants who are going to be presenting that meeting next month. Please feel, get a hold of staff to let them know that you'd like to have something put on the agenda. At least if you can get that to them by February 19th. There's nothing else, I'll close and call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.